Welcome to the Criminal Imagination. This series, Crime and Civilization, begins with a simple question. What if the true purpose of law is not justice but control? Across centuries, crime fiction has recorded the political fears of its age, from cursed kings and cunning thieves to corrupt judges and silent witnesses. Each episode investigates how power operates through a narrative, what it hides, who it condemns, and what happens when the system turns inward and begins to devour itself. Charles Reade said, "There is no cruelty so inexorable as that which pretends to be scientific." Today, we are investigating a novel that stunned Victorian Britain and is still deeply relevant today. Charles Reade's Hard Cash, written in 1863. It is subtitled A Matter of Fact Romance. This novel is many things at once: a financial thriller, a sensational expose, a moral protest. But at its heart, it is a chilling indictment of how mental illness becomes criminalized under the guise of science, respectability, and institutional authority. Our core premise: institutions, whether monarchies, asylums, banks, or families, are not neutral. They construct categories of crime and madness in ways that serve their own survival. In Hard Cash, Reed exposes how scientific authority and capitalist interest conspire to imprison the vulnerables, sanctioning abuse as care. Let's begin our inquiry. To understand Hard Cash, we need to situate it within its historical moment. Mid-Victorian Britain, a time when the asylum was both expanding rapidly and being marketed as a humanitarian reform. The 19th century saw an explosion in the number of private and public lunatic asylums, justified by a discourse of science, benevolence, and public order. The 1845 Lunacy Act made it compulsory for counties to provide asylums, but also created enormous space for private profiteering. Families, especially wealthy or aristocratic ones, could discreetly commit relatives who were inconvenient, embarrassing, or simply emotionally unwell. Here we must ask, what counts as madness? Who decides? Reed's answer is deeply political. Madness in hard cash is not a fixed category. It is a diagnosis wielded by institutions to neutralize those who disrupt financial, familial, or patriarchal power. The crime in this novel is not committed by the supposed lunatics, it is committed against them, under the polished mask of science and respectability. At the center of Hard Cash is Alfred Hardie, a rational and capable young man who uncovers that his father, Richard Hardie, has stolen £14,000 belonging to Captain Dodd, a family friend and a seaman. When Alfred seeks to expose this financial fraud, his father has him declared insane and institutionalized. This moment is crucial. The asylum becomes the instrument of silencing, not a space of care but of containment. Let's pause and examine this. What kind of system allows a man to weaponize psychiatry and protect financial fraud? Reed, ever the reformist, meticulously researched wrongful committal cases. He drew from real-life reports by the Lunacy Commission, legal transcripts, and journalistic exposés. He shows how a corrupt medical establishment, one that profits from private patients, can collude with relatives to detain the inconvenient. Alfred's sanity is never in doubt for the reader, but in a world where a doctor's note overrides your voice, institutional truth replaces personal truth. This is where Reed's genius lies. He dramatizes the gap between actual sanity and institutional judgment. He shows how language itself, terms like mania, delusion, hysteria, becomes a code not for mental illness but for powerlessness. Reade does not portray the asylum as a place of violent horror in the Gothic sense. Instead, it's more insidious. The abuse is administrative, sanitized, rationalized. Doctors like McVisherly and Dr. Wolfe are not overtly sadistic. They are just indifferent. They are bureaucratic. Or at most, they are blindly invested in their authority. They follow protocols, they chart symptoms, they explain away resistance as further evidence of madness. This is what Reade wants to reveal to us, that institutional abuse can flourish precisely because it does not look like abuse. It looks like care. It sounds like science. It wears a lab coat and speaks with moral detachment. In one horrifying scene, Alfred is restrained and drugged not because he is violent but because he insists that he is sane. That very insistence becomes pathological in the eyes of the doctors. This is the perverse logic of the asylum. The more you assert your reason, the more mad you appear. Let that sink in. It is no accident that Alfred's incarceration is motivated by financial fraud. Hard Cash is also a crime novel about embezzlement, debt, and speculation. Reade's title refers directly to money. But Reade's larger point is that madness and money are entangled. Institutionalization serves capitalism. The asylum neutralizes whistleblowers. The family becomes a corporate structure where dissent is criminalized. In Richard Hardie, we see the new bourgeois patriarch, unscrupulous, terrified of scandal, and utterly willing to use institutions to preserve status. Alfred, by contrast, is the ethical subject, a modern Hamlet who sees rot in the house but is rendered voiceless. Women too are caught in this machinery. Julia Dodd, Alfred's fiancée, she must navigate patriarchal suspicion, male guardianship, and the pressure to doubt her own instincts. When she begins to investigate, she too is pathologized as unstable. This isn't madness, it's gaslighting. Reade shows us how both madness and sanity are scripted roles assigned based on what the system needs to maintain its illusion of order. Throughout Hard Cash, Reade wrestles with the role of evidence. How can one prove sanity in a system designed not to listen? Here the novel becomes a philosophical inquiry into the nature of truth under institutional power. Alfred keeps meticulous records. He documents every abuse, every contradiction, every moment of lucidity. Yet these records mean nothing within the asylum. They are dismissed, torn up, or ignored. Truth, Reade argues, is not objective in this world. It is procedural. It must pass through the filters of authority, science, and legality. Without access to these mechanisms, even the sanest voice becomes invisible. This is the crime at the heart of Hard Cash, not insanity, but the erasure of reason itself. Reade's battle is epistemological. How do you prove what you know when the court, the doctor, and the family all insist that you are wrong? This question reverberates into our own era. From psychiatric incarceration to state surveillance, from medical bias to political discrediting, Hard Cash offers a devastating portrait of how truth can be institutionalized out of existence. It is important to note how Reade tells this story. The novel was first serialized in All the Year Round, a periodical edited by Charles Dickens. But when Dickens saw the direction it was taking toward a furious critique of psychiatry, he dropped it. Reade published it elsewhere. This tells us something about the risk he was taking. Reade blends sensationalism with documentary realism. He includes footnotes, legal citations, and direct references to real life cases. It's a hybrid genre, part novel, part expose, part legislative protest. This strategy isn't just literary, it is political. Reade knew that fiction had a unique power to infiltrate public consciousness. By telling a compelling story filled with love, suspense, and moral outrage, he forced readers to confront an uncomfortable truth. The asylum was not a sanctuary, it was a crime scene. He even published a pamphlet, Very Hard Cash, to defend the novel against critics, reiterating that its sensationalism was grounded in documented reality. This is a strategy later used by writers like Upton Sinclair and Ida B. Wells. Turn the novel into a weapon. Use fiction to demand reform. After its publication, Hard Cash did have impact. The Lunacy Commission was forced to respond. The public became more suspicious of private asylums. Though reforms were slow, the novel helped spark a wider debate about patients' rights, wrongful detainment, and the role of profit in psychiatry. But the legacy of this work is larger. Hard Cash stands at the crossroads of two genealogies. First, the legal medical Gothic, where institutions became the site of psychological and moral terror. The social justice novel, where fiction becomes a call to arms against systematic abuse. It anticipates later works like The Yellow Wallpaper, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and even Shutter Island. All of these inherit Reade's fundamental insight that institutional care can be a mask for violence. So, what is the real crime in Hard Cash? It is not Alfred's supposed madness. It is not Richard Hardie's theft. It is the legitimized abuse of the institutional power, the transformation of sanity into silence, the way science becomes an accomplice to social control. Hard Cash shows us that being unwell or merely perceived as unwell can be enough to strip you of freedom, voice, and identity. That is the crime Reade uncovers, not the one committed by an individual, but by the state and its instruments under the name of reason. And now, as we close, here is the question I want to leave you with. In today's world where mental health is still stigmatized and institutions still control narratives, who gets to define what is sane and what protections do we truly have when those institutions turns against us? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, remember this. Crime fiction isn't just about whodunits, it's about why something is punished, who is protected, and what gets erased in the name of order. Hard Cash isn't just a Victorian novel, it's a mirror, and in that mirror we might still see ourselves. Thank you for watching Crime and Civilization. Stay thoughtful, stay critical, stay human.